Hello and welcome to the Matchbook NFL podcast. I've got some good news and I've also got some bad news. Bringing these guys in, you see lots of winners last week. That's the good news. The only problem is, guys, it's hard to recapture that. The only way is down, or else do we maintain 8 winners. Count them out, 8 winners. First off, in the top left of your screen, if you're watching us now on YouTube and Twitter, Adam Chernoff. Bottom left, Drew Dinsick, and the bottom right, the Professor Brad Allen. Brad, I will start with you first. Lots of winners last week. Any other key takeaways from week 3?
Any other key takeaways? I mean, maybe all the debuts. I think we had 5 new quarterbacks starting, and broadly, I think they did pretty well. So I mean, maybe there's something in that you know these kids coming up have played quarterback a lot longer than maybe 10 years ago and thrown it around a lot more. So maybe they're a bit more NFL ready young.
Yeah, they're starting them earlier in college as well as freshmen. Drew Dinsick, what are you thinking?
Agree with that point. I think also NFL coaches are getting better at integrating college-style, systems into the, to kind of help these guys along instead of kind of forcing, 3 years you're going to learn my system or you're going to, get lost. Instead, they're kind of adapting more to the strength of the quarterbacks, which is great to see. But even more than just having a winning week last week, it was so refreshing to be on the right side of a number of market moves and then have those moves make sense and mean winning results. So that was a huge relief, and just in general, it feels like things are starting to kind of make more sense in the NFL, which is great.
Thankfully, Adam Chernoff, you were definitely on a good few of those moves, especially that Rams and the Rams and Browns under 50.5. By the time we published that on Tuesday morning, Adam, it was gone to 48.5.
Yeah, there's never anything wrong when the article goes up and then the day later the market's not even available. So
gone.
definitely
clean out.
Definitely good. It's a bit disappointing. Probably few people can get on that, but yep, all around good week. Like Drew said, lines in the movement, 12-4 in the right direction. So it started to make a lot more sense. But good to just see a correction overall. And now we get to finally look at some numbers heading into week 4 that have some meaning, and we can start extracting some noise. So it's going to be a good show coming up.
Absolutely. Let's dig right into week 4, and let's start. We'll go from back to front, and we'll start on Monday Night Football. The Cincinnati Bengals at the Pittsburgh Steelers, both 0-3. So this is like the easiest sell ever, guys. This should be the easy one. Everyone's going to stay up Monday night over here in the UK and Ireland for this. Currently, Steelers 3.5-point favorite. The total is 44. You can back those Cincinnati Bengals at 2.8, or if you're mad enough, you can back Pittsburgh at 1.52. Brad, I will start with you on this one. I think you're winning the Mason Rudolph argument. I know myself and Drew were on a different side of it. He did have 1 or 2 touchdown passes, but on the whole, I think you're ahead at the moment, Brad.
He had a 7.7 QBR, lads. So, I mean, he would be expected to win.
I said you're winning. I didn't see you won it.
It's not won yet, but I mean, the battle is heading my way. I mean, the stat everyone threw out this week was he threw 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage, threw 2 passes beyond the line of scrimmage, and both went for touchdowns. Even with that, he went 14 for 27, 174 yards. That's 7.7 QBR. And it feels to me that he's who perhaps we thought he was, 3rd round pick, who if he had any NFL talent, really to speak of, if he actually had it in him, he would have been taken first because he looks like the prototypical NFL QB. And he looked awful Sunday against a Niners defense, which is probably middle of the pack. I don't think we can take too much away from them so far this season. But it kind of showed to me just how bad the Steelers team is now, basically without, the benefit of a Hall of Fame quarterback leading the way. They have Juju Smith-Schuster at wideout, he's not as efficient as he was last year when the defense had to focus elsewhere. James Conner, I think, is one of the worst running backs at forcing missed tackles in the league. The the coverage is one of the worst in the league by Pro Football Focus. So I really think this is a bottom 5 NFL team. I think that pick they traded away for Minkah Fitzpatrick is going to be top 7 or so. So yeah, I mean, I think it's probably around a 5.5 win team. And I don't really see how you can say the Bengals are any worse than that. And so just simple math, I think there is a shade of value on the Bengals.
Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, we saw it open right around 4.5 and came down to 4. And I think that was probably a bit of the reaction to what we saw from Pittsburgh against San Francisco. They only had 9 of their 10 drives. They failed to amass more than 14 yards. So that's pretty daunting. And of course, the 2 scoring drives, a 76-yard and a 39-yard pass. But there was also a 31-yard pass interference penalty, which was their 3rd most efficient play of the entire game. So pretty concerning. It was sort of naturally an overlook for me to start, considering how poor both of these secondaries are. Cincinnati 30th, Pittsburgh 28th. Zach Taylor willing to throw the football more than any other team through 3 weeks. Almost 8 out of every 10 plays are coming out as a pass for Cincinnati. Little concerned, though, about the Steelers, who are probably going to be able to generate some pressure on Andy Dalton. Those numbers for Dalton aren't as significantly poor of a drop-off as many people might think, but I think that this pass rush probably enough to negate some of the Cincinnati offensive success. Not really something that I would look for laying 4 points on Mason Rudolph at home in prime time, as Brad sort of alluded to. A pretty good stay-away game for me. I think, if anything, maybe the total's a shade short, but nothing really catching my eye in this one.
Drew Dinsick, you finally got it right with the Steelers last week. 3rd time lucky. I sense you're not going in again, though.
Lucky is the right word for that one, because for most of that game, they were +3 in the turnover margin, and yet they squeaked by with a cover. The Niners, had they been a little bit sharper, a little bit less sloppy, I think put the Steelers away pretty comfortably in that game. A lot of my thinking heading into that, I was excited about the looks we saw from the Steelers offense with Mason Rudolph in there against the Seahawks. I liked that, they were doing some innovative play action. They were doing some nice different types of motions and packages we don't usually see with Roethlisberger. All of that stuff kind of fell apart and never really became useful in that San Francisco game because the offensive line was nowhere to be seen. I had expected that unit was going to be a little bit more cohesive, give the young quarterback some time to make those reads, make those plays. But they were up against a tough defensive line in San Francisco, and they just looked completely out of sorts until the very tail end of that game. And so, my expectations for Pittsburgh are in line with Brad's. I think we're talking about a 5-win team at best here. And I think this should be pretty much a coin flip type of game. I've gotten on board with the Bengals. I was sold down to +3.5 here. And I think this is decided by a key turnover late, one way or another, missed field goal, made field goal. And on the other side of the ball with the Bengals, they kind of lost. They looked good in week 1 against the Seahawks. They were running plus EV offensive, play designs and play calling, play sequencing and all of that. And then, they totally lost the plot on that week 2 and the first half of week 3. They've kind of found it again in the second half of that Bills game. And if they've learned anything from this, young season to this point, and they carry that approach into this game, then they're absolutely live to get the win. But at least, this should be lined around +3, and because you're talking about 2 pretty poor teams that are about equal strength, and somebody's got to win, or at least not lose this week. And it's anybody's guess. And at +4.5 or +3, 4 +3.5, I'm on the Bengals here.
Yeah, 3.5 still widely available, just under even money, 1.99. Brad, Ali, you wanted to come back in on that before we move on?
Yeah, just a quick one on how, so in neutral situations on early downs, the Bengals are throwing close to 70% of the time. And I think if they keep that up, then they can win this game. Because if they try and run the ball, that is the strength of the Steelers' defense and the weakness of the Cincinnati offense. I think they're worse in the league by rushing success rate. So if they stick with that game plan and throw the ball 70% of the time, I think they can win this game.
All right, consensus is the Bengals +3 and the hook with the half the point. Let's move on to Sunday Night Football. Slightly more sellable game, guys. I think myself and Brad might even stay up for this one. The New Orleans Saints currently a 2.5 point underdog here, 1.99. Moneyline betting at the moment, you can back the Dallas Cowboys at 1.76. The New Orleans Saints 2.28, and the total is 47. Brad, Allen, I presume we're not going to get too carried away with the Saints after last week against that Seattle defense.
Well, I mean, I was against the Saints again Sunday in the insights column. basically saying how poor Bridgewater's been since, the last 3 years, basically since he had that knee injury, and how he wasn't aggressive anymore. Well, he came out, he went 19 of 27, 177 yards. His average pass travelled just 3.3 yards past the line of scrimmage, and his average completion was 1.8 yards past the line of scrimmage. So he's lived up to it. They obviously got a load of turnovers, played them in front, and the Seahawks insisted on running the ball.
And no Taysom Hill, Brad.
That was very strange. Well, perhaps we'll get to that in a bit. But I mean, I looked at this box score midway through the third quarter, and Russell Wilson is 15 of 17 for about 200 yards, and they're losing like 20-7. And it's infuriating that the Seahawks have one of the best quarterbacks in the league and insist on smashing Chris Carson into the line, even when trailing. So the point is, Bridgewater has not been impressive at all, if you ask me. I don't know why they're not using Taysom Hill. That is a bit head-scratching. Someone suggested maybe Peyton was worried that now he's the actual backup quarterback, he can't risk him. I don't know, but it would seem to me that he would at least give you a better chance of winning than someone who just won't throw the ball down the field. NFL defenses will clamp down on that pretty quickly. And then the Cowboys, I think, their offense already is the best in the league by DVOA. It's better than the Chiefs. I've talked about them before, all the play action, all the motion, how, Dak is number one in just about every accuracy metric so far this season. So, yeah, I think I'm surprised this moves off the 3. I mean, I've seen a couple of, model-driven people saying, yeah, I like the Saints here, but I don't think that encapsulates what these two teams are as we speak.
Yeah, line most definitely moving with the Saints here, Drew, because it's plus 2.5 at 1.94. You come back, Dallas Cowboys at minus 2.5. You on the Cowboys bandwagon this week, Drew?
I think they're the right side, and I like all of those points that were made there. And the only thing that I can glean out of the folks who are backing the Saints, they play up at home in prime time. It's maybe one of the last places in the NFL where you still have a real home field advantage. And if you're trying to poke holes in the Cowboys, you can say, okay, well, yeah, their offense looks great because look at the defenses they've played. They really haven't been tested to this point. And I don't think we really know what we have in terms of how good they are overall, but it's better than what the Saints have. And it's pretty good. I honestly even though we haven't seen them tested, they are calling and scheming well. My only concern is that without Gallup out there, they don't really have a second receiving threat, and it makes it a little bit tougher to kind of be pass heavy early downs if you only have kind of one guy who can get open. And so that combined with the fact that I have seen absolutely nothing from Bridgewater that suggests he's going to light up the score sheet here. This is a dead underlook for me. I'm under 47 here all the way.
And that's ticked up, Drew, because it opened at 45, so you're getting even more value.
Yeah. Also, another, both moves, neither one made sense here to me. People who are, running to the window to back the Saints. And honestly, maybe they didn't watch the game last week. I mean, the Saints won thanks to a punt return, a couple of key turnovers, and Pete Carroll coaching with his head up his butts. Other than that, the Saints, and I should say, the Saints. We've seen this now 2 weeks in a row. We've seen this. Saints spend the week on the West Coast, focused preparation, come out, and all phases of the game were excellent. Week before, the Niners spend a week on the road, full week of preparation, come out, and phenomenal in all 3 phases of the game. Like there is something to be said about that, and we'll have to kind of keep an eye open for that. The Raiders had a chance to do it this week after playing Minnesota last week. They could have stayed in the East Coast and prepped for this Indy game. Instead, they go back to the Bay. So. Forget about that. But I think we're seeing some signal there where, the teams that are organizationally, when they're, they know they have these tough travel spots coming up, they're making plus EV decisions about, how to prep for those spots, and they're performing well. And I think that was what we saw more last week with the Saints than that they're actually like a contender or a good team. This is an 8-win team with Bridgewater starting over the next, handful of games here.
Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking?
I think this is a pretty obvious spot for a lot of bettors to try and get cute. We saw Sunday Night Football, Rams-Browns. That was an enormous decision that went the way of the players. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this market and see it coming down just a little bit from 3 to 2.5 and sort of expect a lot of attention on Dallas and just go with the Saints. for a couple points Drew mentioned with the home field advantage, playing on prime time Sunday Night Football. Everyone tends to really buy into that home field narrative, especially in the Superdome. And I think there's just going to be sort of a willingness to go against the volume here, which will be mainly coming in on Dallas. But it's really coming down to a numbers versus narrative type of handicap. If you want to look at the numbers, well, Dallas is going to rank higher than the New Orleans Saints in pretty well any metric that you're going to put at it. And you're going to have to do a little bit of work to separate the noise from the strength of schedule faced. But if it comes down to it, the Cowboys better at defending the rush in terms of success rate against than they are against the pass, which means the Saints are going to find sustained success. They're going to have to look to throw the football, as Brad mentioned with Teddy Bridgewater, not really something that they can do efficiently down the field. I was a little bit surprised, and to do a bit of self-scouting on what I expected last week, a lot of that was really that Sean Payton was going to put together a fantastic game plan. I don't know if he's actually very limited with Bridgewater and the lack of weapons that he has at receiver, or if that was just a case of the Saints getting up 20-7 and them trusting their defense to take it the rest of the way, and him conserving a little bit of the creativity, holding it for this week in a much bigger game. So it's kind of a coin flip from that perspective, but it's difficult to see a situation where the Cowboys probably won't find a ticket in my account, and this one is just a much better side. I think the Saints a little inflated off of that performance last week, so it would be Cowboys or nothing for me here.
Cowboys are not if you Adam Chernoff. And also, let's remember with the Seahawks last week, we've given them plenty of stick here before. Like Brian Schottenheimer called a terrible game. There was some play calls were just really bad. So, we're probably expecting Kellen Moore to get that right. And also, just for what it's worth, I know that the Cowboys defense has come under a bit of pressure after that first performance against the Dolphins, but good defenses and good defense coordinators adjust, and they did that, and they absolutely stoked Miami in the second half. So it's something to just be aware of and not get too carried away or fall off that Cowboys defense bandwagon. I'm very much on it. Right, that's on Sunday night's game. Let's move on to one of Sunday evening's games. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Los Angeles Rams. The Bucs, you can back them on the money line here at 4.7. The Rams are 1.25. Current main point spread. The Bucs getting plus 9.5, and that's currently at 2.0 at even money. 49 is the total. Adam, I'll start with you on this one. What are we thinking here with the Rams? I mean, it's hard to know how good they were on Sunday night. They obviously started poorly in the first half, came on in the second half. But man, that Browns offense was terrible.
Well, we'll pull out the Jared Goff checklist. If you're handicapping a game that involves Jared Goff, you want to look at, is he playing at home? Can the opponent generate pressure? Is he playing at home this week? Yes. Can the opponent generate pressure? Well, not really nearly as well as what we saw with the Browns. So we're going to probably see good Goff in this game, and he's going to be able to attack a secondary that I think is actually wildly overperforming. And it might be difficult to point to a team that sort of grades out in the bottom 8 in secondary and say they're overperforming, but this has come against the 15th easiest schedule of opposing pass offenses, so right in the middle of the average. But you look at who they faced. They got the worst version of Jimmy G we've seen this entire season, whose numbers have gone a long way to inflate the 49ers passing numbers in the last 2 weeks. We saw the Buccaneers secondary go against Cam Newton in the game before he went out with injury. And then they get Daniel Jones in his first start, who did very little in the first half. And then the Buccaneers kind of collapsed in the second half. So we're really seeing these numbers a little bit inflated. I think there's a lot of noise within these numbers that the secondary have put up, but they're still not grading out very well anywhere across the board. Their front seven, probably a bit of the opposite, getting a little bit disrespected by the market. But you look how that lines up against the Rams. Now LA is going to be at home. They get to run their spread sets and stretch this Tampa Bay secondary out wide, but also deep as well, with Goff's yards per attempt going significantly higher when he's playing at home. The one game he played this year already, he was over 10 yards per attempt. Probably going to be the same here. In terms of understanding why the line has come down, well, you look at the LA Rams defensive line generating pressure on Jameis Winston, sort of this similar story to Jared Goff, where those numbers will come down pretty dramatically. But then also the Rams secondary has been very good at preventing explosive plays, the number one unit in the league at doing so through 3 weeks of football. So when you look at Jameis, extremely poor throwing the ball 10 yards or less, the lowest passer rating in the NFL when you're doing that. But he jumps up to 8th when he's throwing the deep ball 10 yards or more downfield. So what I like about this over specifically now at 49.5 is you're going to get the Buccaneers, who have only been in a negative game state, trailing by more than 7 points for 20 plays this season, but 16 of those plays turned into throws. So now we can probably expect a game where for the first time this year, they're playing from a significant deficit with the Rams installed as a 10-point favorite. I think a very positive matchup for the Rams offense. I think we're finally going to see just sort of a relentless, deep passing attack. Not saying it's going to be highly successful, but at least the play calling is going to be there from Arians. You might see the Rams settle down a little bit in defense with the lead at home coming off of a Sunday night game. I think that just game state-wise it sets up. But I understand the move down just based on the defense of the Rams and how it can potentially affect the Bucs and what teams or bettors have seen from the Bucs 2 to 3 weeks this season on offense. But I'd definitely be looking to the over here. I think this gets into the mid-50s.
Let me just ask you about particular number there, because obviously that number has come down. It's 49 right now. Key number in the NFL, 28-21 kind of win. What's your story? Would you stay on the 49? You can currently back at 1.95, or are you going to 49.5 for an extra bit of juice?
Yeah, I'm taking the over at either number. Depends if you want to be a little bit bigger of a payout of 49.5. I think this is mid-50s end result for this one.
Joe
Dinsick,
what are you thinking on this one?
Well, I've gotten involved in the Bucs here. I've taken the points. I'm kind of, we talked about the existential crisis of home field advantage not mattering this year. This is a good example. This number looks like it's gotten 3 points built into it for home field advantage for the Rams. I think even on a good day in the Coliseum, that's a stretch. And if I'm getting involved in backing a dog this year, I'm probably looking for a dog on the road, and I'm probably looking for a dog where I know they'll be live in the game, via the passing attack. To a degree, I've been impressed with Jameis Winston's passing this year. Obviously, it was I thought there were a lot of they kind of woke up in the first half of that Giants game. That was a weird loss for them. They kind of fell asleep at halftime. Obviously, they stopped being aggressive, and I don't love their long-term prospects as far as getting lots of wins this season. But I think they're going to be competitive. I think they're going to be in games, and I think they have the passing, weapons and the attack to score points in this one. Not unlike what Adam just broke down. And on top of that, the Rams have traveled a lot already this season. They have a huge game coming up on Thursday against the Seattle Seahawks. So some potential, and actually starting to notice this a little bit this year, saw it a little bit last year as well. The better organizations, the better coaches are splitting their time the week before Thursday Night Football so that they can kind of do two preps so that they can implement their scheme on a short week before Thursday Night Football. McVay's offense is one of those. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, they're just kind of trying to get it done, cleanly, as opposed to, really trying to make a statement in this game. So if you're going to give me 10 points, then I'll take that every time in this situation.
Brad Allen, reading your post on insights.matchbook.com, which is just published on Wednesday evening. Spoiler alert, you're totally in agreement with Drew on this one.
Yep. I like that point about the Rams with this big game on deck. Just pulled this stat up here. So favourites are 55 and 76 against the spread before Thursday Night Football. I think the idea is that they're probably overlooking the opponent ahead to the big game on Thursday. I do quite like the over call as well. So, Adam broke it down that perhaps the Bucs defense is a little bit overrated based on who they face, but I would make a similar case for the Rams. So they've beaten the Panthers when Cam Newton was still out there with his busted foot or shoulder. They've beaten the Saints when Drew Brees went out the game quite early. Yeah. And then last week, who did they beat? Remind me. Oh, they beat the Browns. They beat the Browns, who are 28th in offensive DVOA this year and have just looked utterly lost. And Baker Mayfield's holding onto the ball. They didn't look good in the first half of that game. And there's an argument to be made that the West Coast team benefits on those night games because their kind of body clock is more suited to that type of game in the second half. So I think the Bucs will put up points here. That was kind of what I said in the insights. I think they're going to score 20 plus. And I like both the over and the plus 10.
Like consensus is points, plenty of points, and the plus. Bucks vertical offense, if it gets going, can be a thing of beauty. Let's have a look at the Chiefs and the Lions next, guys. Current betting at Matchbook can back those Kansas City Chiefs, who love some Mahomes at 1.39. Plenty of people will get involved in that. 3.52 Detroit Lions, 6.5 is the current line, dead even in the market at 1.98 on both sides, and a whopping 54.5 on the total. Drew Dinsick, the Chiefs opened at a flat 6, then went to 7. It's back down to 6.5. Which side are you on in this one?
I think this one closes at 7. I think it's going to get back up there, and I think the Chiefs are the right side. I got involved here at 6.5 right at flat 2, and I would lay 7.5 points here if that's what they open, because this is a mismatch in every sense of the word with the Chiefs offense. If they feel like scoring 40, I think they're going to get to 40 on Sunday. Perfect conditions, vast field, indoors. We have not really even seen this Chiefs offense indoors to this point in the Pat Mahomes era. So it's going to be exciting to see what they can put up in terms of offensive production. I know the couple of things that are cooling me off a little bit, because I modeled this game 33-21. I'm looking at, I would have expected, double digit kind of a spread here in any other setting. But this is the third road game out of the first 4 for the Chiefs. That's a little concerning. It's not a super meaningful game for them, being that it's an out of conference opponent. They have a game against the Colts on Sunday, so maybe they're thinking about that one a little bit. But I thought the Chiefs left points on the field against the Ravens. They could have gone higher than 33 in that game. And that was a much tougher defense. This Lions defense doesn't really inspire me. They're going to be without Darius Slay, who's an enormously important piece of their pass defense. If the Chiefs fail to cover here, it will be simply on the basis of some sort of backdoor shenanigans from the Lions. And the Lions are capable of that. I guess I will note that even if the Lions at some point have a lead in this game, it doesn't spook me or deter me at all, because they've now a couple of weeks in a row tried to, against the Cardinals week 1 and against the Eagles last week, they try to run out the clock, but they're completely incapable of that. And that's really the only way you can kind of hurt the Chiefs, is if you have a strong running game. So there's nothing that I see as an advantage here for the Lions, and I really don't understand why they put themselves in this position where they're going to get all this Chiefs money. And it's going to be fireworks for this Chiefs offense, the way I handicap this game.
Yeah, by some things take the 6.5 now, but it's going to head back to 7 or 7.5. Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking on this one?
Well, I would love it if this number was a little less than 6, and I think that
you can't have it. You can't have it everywhere.
I know. Maybe put one in the queue on Matchbook and hope someone gets greedy. Look, I think the Detroit Lions are setting up to be one of the biggest sells in the NFL. I'm not to go against Drew's look on Kansas City, but I kind of hope that somehow Detroit is able to keep this close and then set something up that we can really take advantage of in a big way in the next couple of weeks. 3-0, but I would argue that they're probably more of a fraudulent 3-0 than
they're 2-0-1.
Pardon me. It could very well be 0-3 in those games. If you look at it, you go 2 weeks back to the Chargers, they end up being outgained by 1.0 yards per play. You look last week against the Eagles, outgained by 0.6 yards per play. They drew a lot of attention from that market a week ago against the Eagles. None of that money has returned to this market, so it was clearly a spot going against the Eagles more than it was support in the Detroit Lions. You look at how they rank in success rate, right around average defensively, and that comes despite facing Kyler Murray in his first ever start, Phillip Rivers on the road with plenty of injuries, and then Carson Wentz on the road with potentially more injuries to playmakers than we've seen a team deal with in the last couple of years. So benefiting from a couple of spots. Play calling has been wildly concerning, especially later in the game. If there's a positive for them in this game, they can probably put together a running game plan because they want to. Not saying they can execute it, but I could see this coaching staff and their eyes lighting up because they see a team that they can run against and not necessarily get criticized for it. But I'm not sure that that translates to success because they're going to probably be playing catch up for a majority of this game. So I'm not going to probably lay this number with Kansas City. I certainly can't make a case for doing so with the Detroit Lions the other way. But I hope that this spot sort of preserves itself sometime in the next 2 or 3 weeks, where we can really take advantage and fade the Detroit Lions once they get a little bit more market support.
Brad Allen, what is your angle on this one, sir?
Not one I've got involved with yet. I think you'd have to be a sadist to bet against Patrick Mahomes in a dome, because
yeah, it's a good point.
I think he can. I think he could name his score. I think he could.
It's a really good point, and it's a really good point, Brad. You saw what he did after that deluge of rain at Kansas City last week. Yeah. It's going to be no rain in Detroit. What can he do?
Yeah, no Darius Slay. I mean, obviously the Lions' plan is going to be to slow it down, but when you're down 14-0 after 10 minutes, you can't really do that. Yeah. I think possibly that angle might be one I look at in play if the Chiefs do score their early points. The Lions famously go slow, which is why sometimes their totals are depressed. If they have to throw that out the window, Stafford can sling it, and they do have the weapons, and we could get a nice shootout if KC get a lead. So I might look to play that over in play.
Yeah, for what it's worth, guys, I normally play first half unders, but I like the first half over in this one, 26.0. Chiefs averaging 24 points in the first half, and I think the Lions are about 14 or something like that. And I just think that they could get off to a hot start, Chiefs, and the Lions, like Brad said, will have to play catch up early. Brad, before we move on, you wanted to come back in on that?
Well, yeah, just on that point that you were making there, the Chiefs, they're throwing it sort of 70% of the time in the first half, and then taking the air out of the ball in the second half. When the game is done. So I think that's a good angle as well.
Drew, also, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, I also support that angle. In fact, what we're kind of, I don't want to drag this too far out of football, because obviously we care about the NFL.
No, that's fine. We can talk about loads of stuff.
You watch enough games, you start to pick up micro trends and stuff like that. And a couple of years ago, it was so obvious with the Golden State Warriors. Like, they just kind of were going through the motions in halftime, and they would come out of the locker room in the third quarter, and they would just hammer. They would just drop the hammer. Right. And so it was like, and they were just, kind of standard lining the games without like really recognizing that, oh, this team is really finding their rhythm, beating them down in the third quarter. We're seeing that a little bit with the Chiefs in the second quarters of games here, before the defense can get into the halftime and like kind of adjust with their approaches. Mahomes kind of figures out where he's going on the field in that first quarter, and the second quarter just bombs away. Like, he could have, and Andy Reid kept him from scoring on that last drive going into halftime. That would have put that game away, and it would have sealed my Ravens ticket, to the loss column last week. But Reed is kind of, he's undecisive. He's not using his timeouts. He doesn't give, Mahomes a chance to shoot for the end zone on that drive. But honestly, I like your look on the first half over, and, we're seeing, these Chiefs kind of build momentum through this first half and be extremely dangerous heading into half.
You want to hear a bad beat story, guys? This is a good one. Okay, so I had that game in Oakland a couple of weeks ago. I had Kansas City over 30.5 in their team total. Scored 28 in the second quarter. What did they do in the second half? All I want is just one measly field goal. 0, donut, nada. Oh, it's a tough one.
The refs took points off the board for you there too in that second half. If I remember correct, there was a pretty obvious fumble return for a touchdown that they took off, and a couple of deep passes. That was tough.
That was week 2. We have so many success stories from week 3 that, it's gone. It's finished. Good luck. We'll see you later. Let's move on to one of Sunday's other early games. Guys, I'll be honest. Titans and Falcons. I'm like, where do we go with this? But I think Brad has an angle, Brad. You better have an angle there. Yeah, you do. Falcons 4-point favorite at 1.97. You can back them on the money line at 1.51. Tennessee Titans at 2.84. Total is 46. Brad Allen, how are the Falcons 4-point favorites against anyone bar the New York Jets or Miami Dolphins?
Hey now.
Hey.
I don't think the Falcons are very good, to be honest. All this is an overreaction to the Titans getting beaten by Gardner Minshew. I think you can forgive them, short week on the road, division rival. They couldn't protect. I think it was 9 sacks or something. But I think the Titans are who we think they are. We know who they are. They're 8.5 win team. They do it every year. They could win more, could win less, but that's their core talent. And I don't really see how this Falcons team is any better than that. They've kind of sputtered through the season. They've just lost their Pro Bowl safety, Keanu Neal. Traditionally, if you back teams who have defensive injuries, it's more impactful there. It's quite good to bet against them on the spread. I think the the methodology there is that you can target the weakness. You know, they're gonna put a rookie safety in there, and you can target him. You know, with Delaney Walker in this case, whereas if it's an offensive injury, you can kind of scheme away from the injury. So yeah, again, this just should be 3.5, 3.25, and I would suspect that's where it's going to close because I don't see why this is 4.
So you're backing Tennessee at +4, 1.99. Adam Chernoff, anything to add on this one?
Yeah, I love these ugly handicaps, especially early in the season, because you can really sort of key in on a couple spots. So, like, the Falcons, for me, are kind of the opposite of what I just talked about the Lions, and potentially somewhere down the road, they're going to be a decent buy low spot. We saw a game last week against Indianapolis where they really had no right being down 17 points like they were. Second half came out. And this offense moved the ball with extreme efficiency. I thought they looked extremely good. Matt Ryan, great game for him as well. But overall with their schedule, on the road at Minnesota and on the road at Minneapolis, and then they also get the Eagles at home, which for the first half of that game at least, the roster was intact before all of those injuries piled up later in the game. So it's been a pretty difficult 3 weeks for them overall. And so I was looking to back them this week potentially against Tennessee. And as I sort of worked through this, I raised up a couple questions, but then the handicap just didn't quite carry out. So you look at the offensive lines that Atlanta has faced, 4th, 20th, and 22nd in adjusted line yards, as well as protection. And the Falcons have really exceeded getting a pass rush, which is not something they're typically known for doing, grading much higher than we've seen them in the past 2 seasons. This game, going up against Tennessee, ranks 16th in offensive line metrics. They're going to be potentially without Tack and Jarrett, their 2 best pass rushers. So that doesn't do them any well. And, of course, against Indianapolis, as Brad mentioned, Keanu Neal goes down. This means now they're searching for a third starting safety in the course of 4 weeks after losing Wilcox in the preseason. So now they're going really deep. They're looking on their practice squad to find someone to potentially fill that void. Their secondary has not been good in the first 3 weeks. Now it only gets worse. So Tennessee, Mariota under pressure has not been good, but now can the Falcons do enough to generate pressure? Normally, without these injuries, you're potentially looking at a situation where they can. Now, with these guys hurt, potentially banged up, they're going to be a lot less than 100%. Tennessee's probably going to have more success than we're giving them credit for moving the football. And all of a sudden, this number becomes a little big. So this week, not the time to move on Atlanta. Certainly can't get there to make a bet on the Falcons. Not sure I'm rushing to bet the Tennessee Titans either, who have just been sort of average everywhere you look, aside from protecting their quarterback, where they dipped down tremendously. Defensively, 4th against the run and 11th against the pass, down in success rate. I don't think those numbers hold. I think that's giving them a little bit too much credit for what they put forth in the first 3 weeks based on the schedule that they've faced. Just another game I'll stay away. But I've got Atlanta circled for some spot, hopefully coming up in the next couple of weeks.
All right, we should wait and see. Brad, Adam, just before I go to Drew, Brad, you wanted to come back in on something Adam said there?
Yeah, a couple of quick notes. So the Falcons secondary, there was a stat put out by Next Gen Stats that 27% of receptions against the Falcons were wide open, which was just the worst in the league. Literally no one near them.
And it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting. And then kind of on the injury luck, so they did come back in that second half, but the Colts aren't a good defense anyway. They were playing out without their all-pro linebacker, Darius Leonard, in the middle. And then their first round safety, Malik Hooker, he went out and came back in and played with a torn meniscus. So, I mean, I think they were playing kind of against the second string there. And the Eagles game, I would say that I downgraded the Falcons off that game. I think the Eagles were hamstrung. They were there to stay in one personnel package all game. They were playing with JJ Arcega-Whiteside and stuff. So I don't think the Falcons were impressive there either. I have these teams pretty even.
Drew, Brad is on the Titans +4. It's a no play for Adam. What way, if any, are you going on this one?
I completely agree and understand with all the points, and I still can't walk to the window and put a bet down on the Titans right now. They're absolutely the right side. They're going up against the JV defense, and they should score points in this game. The problem is they could score 17 and then just play keep away because they have a very conservative approach. Arthur Smith is not an NFL coordinator, as far as I can tell you. I honestly, I had a cue. I was ready to play Titans. And then I thought back to Thursday Night Football when they were down. They were down 3 scores in the second half. And rather than, run an NFL offense, they were still handing off on every first down, getting stoned at the line. They managed to eat 7 minutes of clock, gaining 28 yards, which is almost impossible in over 11 plays, and they scored nothing down 3 scores. And it's like
absolute majestic stuff for underbackers.
it's like
myself and Brad were on under 39 there, Prof, aren't we? It was beautiful stuff.
Unbelievable. I mean, like doing the math, because usually when you have that many plays and you go that few yards, because there's lots of penalties and stuff. Well, that stops the clock. So it's legitimately hard to eat that much clock and gain that little over, in that high leverage of a part of the game. It's until I see some more, kind of growth and some better performance out of this coaching staff. I'm out on the Titans, but I like your side. I think there's line value, and they should be able to get to kind of control this game and play from ahead, which they like to do. So, best of luck.
Best of luck for you, Prof. Too many of us are following in, Prof. Yeah, we believe.
This is why there's value, because they look so disgusting on Thursday night, in my opinion.
All right, let's move on to a better game, I would suggest. 2 unbeaten teams here, the Patriots and the Bills. Patriots open as a 6.5-point favorite, currently bet up to -7 at 1.97. You can back them on the money line at 1.35, and the Buffalo Bills 3.82. Total has dropped a 1.5 from 44 to 42.5. Drew Dinsick, are the Buffalo Bills for real?
Man, I think their defense is legit. And I think that we have a lot of questions that need to be answers about the Patriots on offense. And maybe this is too simple, but, a 43.5 on the open was an easy look for an under for me in this game. I would be surprised if this is in any way, shape, or form a runaway for the Patriots, like some Patriots backers out there are expecting. And I personally can't make a case for the Bills to stay inside this number. I think 7 is about right for this team. And it should be quite an atmosphere and quite an environment for the Bills at home up in Orchard Park against the Patriots. They have some reasons to be enthusiastic. But what we've seen from Josh Allen to this point, and the 3-0 record for the Bills, in my opinion, is somewhat fraudulent. In the same way we kind of pointed out that the Cowboys haven't really been tested based on the defenses they've faced, I would say the exact same thing for these Bills. And even going back to week 1, going against Adam's poor Jets defense, he should have had multiple pick sixes in that game. I think he had 1. And then from there to play the Giants, which is barely qualifies as an NFL secondary, and then from there to the Bengals, he just has not had to face anything close to a top tier NFL defense to this point in the season. And lo and behold, the Patriots are trotting out, in my opinion at least, a clear top 3, maybe top 1 across the entire league in terms of defensive personnel, packaging, master of disguising and confusion, and really, eating young quarterbacks alive with Belichick on the other side calling the defense here. This sets up beautifully for 20-0 type of game. I mean, the Patriots. I don't think that they're going to find it easy to go against this Bills defense. This sets up for kind of an ugly knockdown, drag out type of fight. And I honestly would like to. I know Adam set this up and teed this up on some of the media he's already done this week, but why they opened this to give the Patriots backers a shot here at such a low number, and why there's some professional support for the Bills is beyond me in this spot, because I don't know how they're scoring. Patriots defense has conceded 0 touchdowns now, going 4 games in a row. The only way you can score on this team apparently is defense or special teams. I would expect against a tougher opponent, they're a little sharper and a little more prepared this week. I'm not seeing the Bills side on this one, although I know a lot of sharp people are.
Only other way you can probably score is if Jarrett Stidham comes in a quarterback for them. Just like the Jets did last week. I mean, they've lost. I think they've lost their last 15 trips to Buffalo. They've lost once. The Patriots, they've no fear of going up there in any way. Just before I go to the other guys there, Drew, what do you make of this line? Because I was looking earlier before I did a run sheet for this, 41.5 the total. Now it's back up to 42.5. And obviously, like we said, it opened at 44, quickly down to 43.5. Where's it going to land?
I would have made it 41 myself. That seems like a reasonable landing spot here. It doesn't look like there's going to be any weather. It doesn't look like there's going to be any other, influences here to push this thing down. Although it's worth noting, Patriots kickers have, Gostkowski hasn't been exactly sharp this season, so that'll take some points off the board potentially as well.
And sorry, so you've bet it at 43.5 yourself?
40, yeah. I bet it at 43.5, and I would probably take it down to 41.5 without really sweating.
Okay, Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking here?
It's another fun handicap, and I think the reason that we've seen some Buffalo support is it's really just the price guys dictating the market. They'll see 7.5, and they'll take it in this situation, and probably take 7 too. So the question comes down to how good are the Patriots, and I think there's been some things that have been disguised, specifically with their offensive line. But looking at the defense, which has been tremendous, number one in both success rate against the pass and the rush, so you can't really downgrade them for that. But where's that true number? They've faced teams that rank 29th, 32nd, and 31st in offensive efficiency. So are they playing to expectation and what you should expect to get against three teams with that poor of an offensive efficiency number? Or it's tough to make a case that they're overplaying what their expectation should be. The big thing here is really their offensive line. It hasn't been tested yet because the teams that they've faced in terms of pass rush have been equally as poor. Jets and Dolphins, bottom 3 in terms of pass rushing. And then that Pittsburgh Steelers game on Sunday night, while the Steelers have generated a pass rush that's been sustainable in the last 2 weeks, that first week it was non-existent, in a terrible spot with the full offseason to prep. But we're still looking at an offensive line with a left tackle, right tackle, and center, which are relatively new and untested. And it's a completely different 3 players than what we saw this team win the Super Bowl with a season ago. Now they face the Buffalo Bills, who come in as a top 7 graded pass rush. They're doing that on the road, which makes it a little more challenging. They don't have that full prep time like we saw them protect against the Steelers. But overall, we've seen the play calling shift a little bit to the run, 6th highest run rate in the NFL. It's been fueled a bit by neutral game state, but we're looking only 17th in terms of rushing success rate. It's not like they've faced a murderer's row of run defenses either. Bills have struggled a bit there, 20th in success rate against the rush, but now with the offensive line really truly being tested for the first time this season, how efficient are the Patriots going to be running the football? And if they're not, then they're going to be forced to throw against this Buffalo Bills coverage unit, which probably doesn't get the respect it deserves within the market. Do I think the Patriots are the significantly better side here? Absolutely. But if we're looking at this number, we're putting it as a 10-point spread on a neutral field. That really equates to about 5 full wins in terms of implied probability over the course of the season. Are the Patriots 5 wins better than the Buffalo Bills? It's a tough discussion to have. It's probably a pretty fair number, but maybe a touch inflated. Like it's tough to say that now the Bills, where they have what we know of them through the first 3 weeks, despite the easy schedule, looks like they've taken some pretty significant strides forward from what we sort of had as a preseason expectation. So I get why people are taking the 7.5. I certainly get why people are taking the under with both of these defenses. But again, and continuing to disappoint the listeners to some extent, not a game that I'm going to be involved side or total.
It's all right. No need to be disappointed. The whale capper is already on it. And currently, Drew, if you want to back on a matchbook, 1.83. But unfortunately, given where you reside, sir, you can. But the professor, Brad Allen, you can play under 43.5 at 1.83. I didn't want to tease there, Drew. Sorry. It'll happen someday.
All good. All good.
Prof, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I've not got involved yet. I think this first half under, the Sully special, might be the play here. 21.5 you can get. You probably have to go 21, I would imagine, is more widely available. These are probably the two of the best 6 defenses. Football Outsiders has them 1 and 6. Patriots, this widely quoted stat, they haven't given up a defensive touchdown since the AFC Championship game last year. It does include the Rams game in there. They're perfectly built for the modern NFL with just coverage wherever you look, and then sort of a multiple front, and they'll just chuck random pass rushes at you and confuse you that way. Belichick does make a habit out of shutting down young quarterbacks. They'll take away John Brown, and I don't really know where where Josh Allen goes after that, except takes off with his legs. But I'm also worried about Patriots scoring that offensive line. They've had a lot of injuries. I think they're missing 2 or 3 starters last week. And as Adam said, the Bills do have a pass rush that can cause them trouble. And old man Brady is not as aggressive as he used to be. Sonny Michel is one of the least elusive and tackle breaking back so far this year. So yeah, I think the under is the best look here.
Under 21.5 currently available on Matchbook at 1.81, but I would suggest that line is going to drop quite significantly, probably for 20.5. Right, gentlemen, we covered 6 games there. I just want to ask, is any other business you guys think there's anything I've missed that, you know, is also worth backing? Obviously, we can't preview every game. Drew, anything else sticking out for you?
I guess just to kind of wrap up the Patriots Bills, that first half under does make a ton of sense because through these, you know, I mean, opening night aside, banner raising night aside, the Patriots offense has not necessarily clicked in the first half of these last couple games. They've gotten off to some slow starts, and Sonny Michel, move on. Like that was a bad decision to draft him in the first round as it was, and then to continue to give him the kind of looks that they are when he's got nothing dynamic to add to the offense is a mistake. And yeah, I think Brady up against this pass defense is going to be tough because Brady's average depth of target is dropping a little bit year over year as he's getting older here, and granted he does have a dynamic weapon in Josh Gordon. That's really it. Edelman really kind of a huge component to that offense. He's dealing with some injuries. It looks like he'll probably go, but still probably won't be 100%. There's a lot to expect that this is a pretty ugly game here, and the first half under might be an even better angle than the full game under. Other than that, across the board, the only other thing I really have to go on is Thursday Night Football, but I think I'm going to save that for my best bets. I did back, yes, there's a. I'll save my Thursday Night Football play for.
All right, saving the best for last. Adam Chernoff, you have 2 tips up on insights.matchbook.com, so I think we probably want to leave them there. Is there anything else that you're looking at?
Yeah, check out the column. There's a pretty interesting look there from the point spread perspective.
Okay, check out insights.matchbook.com for Adam's. Drew, what are you thinking?
I forgot one. I knew there was one more. I knew there was one more play that I forgot to mention to you guys, and I just like your take on this.
Don't say the Dolphins. Don't say the Dolphins. Please don't say the Dolphins.
No. I couldn't help myself. I took the +7 with the Browns against the Ravens. I know I'm big on the Ravens. Ravens are going to win the AFC North. They are going to be in the top 3. I still feel very strongly about that. Browns play them tough. And what we saw from the Browns in prime time has really, really popped the balloon in terms of the public perception of that team. They can still do some things that will make this tough for the Ravens. They're getting
Drew, they have to adjust to West Coast offense somewhere, because that ball has got to come out quicker.
I'll counter that.
Okay.
I'll counter that this week. I think the Cleveland Browns might unintentionally back into the best game plan possible to beat the Ravens if they're stubborn and don't change. If there's one thing the Ravens have struggled through the first 3 weeks, it's defending the 3 wide receiver 11 personnel sets. The Browns running it at almost the same rate the Rams ran it a year ago. If Freddie Kitchens is stubborn and tries to prove his point, I think the Browns are actually going to have more success against the Ravens this week than they would if they tried to adjust back to some of their jumbo packages we saw them have success with a year ago. So it'll be interesting to see if stubbornness prevails this week.
It's interesting because it's almost like a Madden offense. They're just running goals. Just literally 3 or 4 wide receivers.
He did it from the 10-yard line. There was first and goal. They ran 4 verts. What do you do?
Crazy stuff. Brad Allen, what do you think about in that one?
Yeah, not involved. I would make the Ravens probably about 7.25 favourites. This Browns offense has just fallen off a cliff. I've got a stat here. Baker's thrown into double coverage at the highest rate in the NFL, 6.4% of his throws. We gave the stat about how he's holding on to the ball. But also Doug Farrar, who is an NFL analyst for USA Today, he tweeted, he's a film study guy, Mayfield's shown real issues processing pre-snap shifts. He basically goes to his first read every time, and if you take that away from him, that's when he holds onto the ball and gets sacked, or he'll force it into double coverage. So I don't know why he's declined, but I think just assuming he's going to suddenly get back to normal, he's brave.
All right, we're almost out of time, so let's go for stay in the quad box and let's go best bets of the week. Adam Chernoff.
Wow, you're leading the show. Am I allowed to say it, or are we still directing to Matchbook Insights? Let's go Redskins +3, and if you want the full breakdown of that one, it's up in my column on Matchbook Insights.
True, Dinsick.
Yeah, I'm looking for the Eagles tomorrow. They're today, if you're watching this on Thursday. The Eagles tonight, I feel like, are very live in this game. The Packers have a ton of growing and putting things together on offense before they are the dynamic world-beating unit that people are warming up to as they look at the standings and see 3-0 and see Aaron Rodgers. They still are a long way from getting there. And this kind of goes hand in hand with like the line. The Eagles' fade last week back in the Lions was kind of, they were beat up. They were putting guys on the shelves, and they were just going to try to do enough to get a win. They didn't. This is now the flip side of that, which is Doug Peterson has been planning for this game for an extra week. He has a specific plan for Thursday Night Football that is, that has proven out over the last couple of years, even when he's been, without key pieces. And on the flip side, you have a rookie head coach in Matt LaFleur who has not ever been in this situation. And I would expect that the offensive woes for the Packers are amplified in this game given the situation. And Eagles very live to get the win. I backed them at +4.5, but I think they win this game.
+4 still available at 1.97 at time recording. Brad, Adam, where are you going for your best bet?
Let's go with the Buccaneers +10. I think 1.91 still available. I think that's a nice one.
+10, and I'm going for that first half over 26 points, Kansas City and Detroit. Let's the handbrake down early. Kansas City probably put up 21, and let's just hope that Matt Stafford and that Detroit Lions get 7. Again, still a mediocre Detroit defense, let's be honest about it. Or sorry, Kansas City defense. Adam Chernoff, some good news for you before we go. The Jets are on a bye, so we can't lose this week. There you go. We just can't lose.
We got the cover last week.
Got the cover.
Covers more than I'm counting wins, but
good teams win. Great teams cover. We leave that around here at Matchbook. Right, that's it from us. We're done for another week. 8 winners last week. I'm hoping for another 8 this week, but let's have a go at it. If we're in the black, we'll be happy with that. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you are, download the Matchbook Betting Podcast, and we'll chat to you next week.